Well, good morning, everybody. I hope you are enjoying your snow day. I don't love how much this feels like COVID again, talking just to a camera, but I am so glad we're able to finish this series today while you all are snowed in, still in your PJs, getting ready to shovel outside, and just having at least one day, if not a couple days, to just relax and to slow down like we've been talking about throughout this whole series. Next week, we'll start a brand new series called When Pigs Fly. And in that series, we're actually going to do it with 3 other churches all together, and I'll tell you more about that next week. But today we finish up our series, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurried. In the past century, we have seen a radical shift when it comes to American work. A century ago, about 90% of Americans were farmers. Today, only 2% of Americans are farmers. This shift came from industrialization, which completely reshaped the American economy. People moved to cities and they started to produce goods in mass. 2 world wars created what President Eisenhower called the military-industrial complex. But after the wars, they had to keep all the factories that they had open. They had to keep them running. What was making military things, they had to figure out a new thing for it to make. So they repurposed factories to make goods instead. But in order to have a reason for all these factories, they had to sell more goods. A shift had to happen in culture in order to keep those open. Paul Mazur of Lehman Brothers was quoted saying this: "We must shift America from a needs to a desires culture. People must be trained to desire, to want new things, even before the old have been entirely consumed. We must shape a new mentality. Man's desires must overshadow his needs." This was called the new economic gospel of consumption, and it worked. We went from citizens to consumers. We went from a needs economy, you just get what you need, to a desires economy. Now, our economy is built on spending money on that people do not have for things they do not actually need, just what they want. Mark Twain said that civilization is the limitless multiplication of unnecessary necessities. And this is only going to continue to rise. And studies are finding that as the nation's wealth increases, the nation's happiness is decreasing. Happiness is just not keeping up with our desires. At the end of the day, most of us believe this lie: more money and more stuff equals more happiness. And here's why this lie, which we all know is a lie, here's why it's so dangerous. Because it isn't fully a lie. It has a half truth in there. See, more money does equal more happiness if you are poor. Princeton University did a study with collaborations of a nationwide researcher, a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, and an economist, and 450,000 Gallup surveys. And in this study, here's what they found. They found that people's overall well-being and happiness does rise with your income until your income hits a certain level. Then once your income reaches a certain level, your happiness no longer rises with your income. It stops, or it might even decrease. And they actually found the amount. Here's the amount where your happiness stops rising with your income. It's $75,000. That's the national average. Before you get to $75,000, before you get to that money will actually increase your happiness because it is making your needs easier to accomplish. It's covering the things you actually need. But once you hit that number, the research that they did finds that your happiness does not increase with more money. It stays the same or it declines after $75,000. John Mark Comer in the book says it this way: "Turns out, once you reach what most Westerners classify as a middle-class life, money and stuff just can't deliver what they promise: happiness." Now you might be thinking at this point, what are we talking about? What does it have to do with hurry? And here's why we're talking about this, and here's why it's mentioned in the book. Here's how consumerism and materialism connects with our hurry. Materialism has sped up our society to an untenable pace. Why? Because every single thing you buy costs you more than money. Everything we buy costs us our time. Let me give you an example. Let's say you want to buy a motorcycle, and you can't actually afford a motorcycle, but you want to buy a motorcycle. Well, what's the math when it comes to a motorcycle? A motorcycle's about $10,000 for a new bike, right? Let's say you're paying $250 a month that you actually don't have. You don't have that extra income. Well, if you want to pay that, what do you need to do? You're going to need to work more. You're going to need to do things. You're going to have to work more in order to get money that you don't have in order to pay for it. And when you get the motorcycle, you have to clean it, you have to maintain it, you have to repair it when it breaks. You also have to get your money's worth. So if you're in a season that you can ride your bike a lot more, then that it might be a good investment. But if you have kids and you have other things you have to do, it might not be a good investment for you. So when you do the cost benefit analysis, you cannot forget, do not forget to calculate. You are paying for that experience not only in cash, but in time. And the less time you have means the more you have to hurry with the time that you currently have. And you can do this with anything you buy. Most of us simply have too much stuff to enjoy a life at a healthy, unhurried pace. This may be why Jesus talks so much about money. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus speaks directly to the temptation of stuff and how it will actually harm us. And in the Sermon on the Mount, there's one section that he talks about our stuff. And we'll see three things when it comes to this stuff. One, we have to see this. Clarify your view on stuff. Let's start with Matthew chapter 6, starting verse 19. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I don't know if you know this, but the storage unit industry is a multi-billion-dollar business. And it exists for one simple reason. Here's why we have storage units. We have more stuff than space. We don't just store what we need, we store what we can't let go of. Our old furniture, our childhood trophies, our boxes we haven't opened in years, things that we might need someday, we need to figure out where to put it because it won't fit in the house. We are literally paying monthly rent to protect things that we don't use. And Jesus says, hey, do not store up things that will eventually crumble away. See, Jesus isn't anti-possessions, he isn't anti-money, he isn't anti-stuff. Jesus is anti-misplaced trust. The problem isn't that we have things, it's when the things have us. When our peace, our identity, our sense of security is wrapped up in what we own, Jesus says that we are investing into the wrong things. And then Jesus flipped the script. He said, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. In other words, you're going to store things and you're going to store it somewhere. The question isn't if, it's what are you storing and where are you storing it? He ends it all with the heart of the whole message. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Your heart always follows your investments. Your resources are the steering wheel to the engine of your desire. So you need to clarify your view on stuff. Make sure that you see it the way that you should see your stuff. That's number one. Number two, pick your master. Clarify your stuff and pick your master. He continues in the Sermon on the Mount, verse 22, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? This is a kind of confusing metaphor. It kind of seems out of left field right after the last verses. But this is actually a first century idiom that Jesus is doing here and saying. If people said that you had a healthy eye in the first century, it had a double meaning. It meant two things. One, you were focused and living with a high degree of intentionality in life, number one. And number two, you were generous to the poor. So if you had an unhealthy eye, the opposite was true. One, you were distracted in life and you lost your focus on what matters most. And two, you've closed your fist to the poor. And then Jesus brings it home in verse 24. No one can serve two masters. Either you hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. He didn't say you shouldn't serve both God and money. He made it clear. You just can't do it. You can't serve God and money. You can only have one master. You simply cannot live in the freedom Jesus offers and models while at the same time getting sucked into the over-consumption that our world has made a norm. They're mutually exclusive. You have to pick one or the other according to Jesus. And even though in our Bibles this section ends here, and we get a subtitle for a new section of the next part of the Sermon on the Mount, Actually, the next part is just as crucial to what we just saw. Here's what it says. It leads us to our third point. Our third point is this: worship the master you picked. Clarify your view on stuff. Pick your master. Worship the master you picked. Look at the next verse, verse 25. Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? That word therefore is very important. I heard a pastor say this a long time ago. I've remembered it ever since. Whenever you see the word therefore in your Bibles, you need to ask yourself, what is it there for? As in, you have to ask yourself, what came before it? Because what came before it tells us what that verse means. The word therefore ties verse 25 with verse 24. We have to understand 24 in order to get to verse 25. They are connected. We worry about what we worship. If you worship money, you will be eaten alive. It will never satisfy you, and it will force you to live life in a state of hurry that you can never sustain, and that your stuff will never satisfy you. So what can we do about it? How can we solve this issue? That if our stuff is making us hurry because our stuff costs more than money, it also costs our time. We have to understand our view of stuff, pick the right master, and then worship the master we picked. Hopefully that master is Jesus. What do we do about it? What can we practice? Well, Jesus modeled in his life a very simple practice. It is called simplicity. What do we mean by simplicity? Well, first, let's talk about what I don't mean. When I say simplicity, another word we could use there is minimalism. You've probably heard that. It's pretty popular. The word simplicity, what I do not mean when I say simplicity is poverty. I'm not saying poverty. It isn't saying that the only way you can be a true follower of Jesus is to not have stuff and to be poor and never have anything new or fun, never have any material things. And I understand why we think we should do this at times. It's a pushback from the rich, flaunting, wealth, prosperity gospel preachers that we see. And yes, a lot of you sent me the Drewski video and I saw it, right? It was making fun of that. So in order to push back on that, we've actually increased what I've seen in a lot of the Christian world. We've increased the poverty gospel. As in, the only way to be holy is also to be poor. That's the only way to be holy. And then so all materialism is bad and evil, and we should just live in a commune somewhere and have nothing. I hate to break it to you. Jesus wasn't poor. Like, we think of Jesus as this poor, homeless hippie who just preached about love all day long. That's not who Jesus was. Before Jesus was a rabbi, he was a tradesman. That means he likely made a normal living wage. Once he started his ministry, he was supported by wealthy donors, most of them upper class women. They paid for his food and for his travel. They paid for the ministry. Judas even managed their budget, which didn't turn out to work out the best way, but he still did it. There are stories of him going to his rich friends' houses and enjoying their food and enjoying their wine and having a good time there. And even at the cross, the Roman soldiers were casting lots for his garments. So his garments must have been worth something if they wanted his garments. Simplicity does not mean poverty. Here's what simplicity means. Simplicity is choosing less of what doesn't matter to have more of what does matter. Simplicity is the intentional promotion of things we most value by removing everything that distracts us from what we value. It is choosing to leverage our time and our money, our talents, our possessions towards what matters most. It is choosing to live with less, which helps us slow down enough so that we can enjoy and experience what matters most. The goal isn't to get rid of stuff. It isn't just to declutter your house or to buy less, things we all probably should be doing. The goal of simplicity is to change your lifestyle. It is to live with a high degree of intentionality around what matters most, Jesus and his kingdom. Simplicity is a practice completely based on the life of Jesus. Jesus talked about money and possessions more than he talked about anything else. Roughly 15% of his recorded teachings were about money or possessions. This is more than he talked about prayer. This is more than he talked about heaven. This is more than he talked about faith. Yet at the same time, money fueled his ministry. And without money, he wouldn't have been able to do ministry the way he did. And he also enjoyed good food and good drink, all of that which costs money. So when you read scripture, you will see the model that Jesus has of this tension when it comes to our money and our stuff. Here's the tension. On one hand, the world and everything in it is very good. Money and possessions are not evil. We are meant to enjoy things in this life, the things that we have, and share with those in need. That's in one hand. The other hand, too much of anything is dangerous, and it has the potential to turn our hearts away from God if we give it a place it's not supposed to have in our lives. Jesus lived perfectly in that tension. He would enjoy a good meal in a friend's house in 1 minute and then warn us about what money can do to our hearts in the next minute. He was able to live in that tension because he lived with simplicity. And that is what we are called to do. Live in simplicity. Live in the tension of being grateful for what we have, enjoying the blessings we have, while also not allowing it to control us. To choose less of what doesn't matter so that we can have more of what does matter. So what are some practical ways that we can model this? That we can start to live in simplicity the way that Jesus lived, in that tension of enjoying what we have, but also not letting it master us by giving some away and living with less. Less of what doesn't matter so we can have more of what does matter. How do we start to do that? Well, I'm going to talk about just a couple practical ways. You don't have to do it this way. This is not like a rules you have to do. These are just ways that if you want to live in simplicity, that it will actually help you. Very, very practical ways. Here's a couple of them. First one is this. Stop impulse buying. Impulse buying has gotten easier than ever because of online shopping. So it's so easy just to buy more things that we don't actually need. Maybe it's a new pair of shoes, even though you have 10 pairs of shoes in your closet. Maybe it's a new outfit you can wear, even though you have so many outfits, you can't even wear all the outfits you have. And to be fair, maybe it's a new vinyl, even though you can't even listen to all the vinyls that you currently have. Here's a general rule that has really helped our family's life and that I think will really help you. If it's an item that you want, wait. Don't buy it right away. The larger the item is, the longer you should wait before you buy it. Give your rational mind time to catch up with your irrational flesh. Then after time has been given and you decide you would still like it, you decide I can actually afford it, and you actually would like to have it and you might even need it, then go buy it. You will be shocked how good it feels to not buy something. So stop impulse buying. Just say, I'm not going to buy anything with impulse. I'm going to wait a little bit. That's a very easy practical way. Here's another one. Give things away. Jesus said it is more blessed to give than to receive. I know it feels good to put new clothes on. I know it feels good to have something new. But it feels much better to give things away. You want to have a more blessed life? Give things away. Give generously. Give regularly. This is why tithing is such an amazing commandment that we are all given. It is us choosing to give with priority. That before anything else, I am going to give. I'm going to give. In order to do that, I'm going to have to spend less. If I want to give 10% like the Bible commands, I need to spend less. Because if I spend a lot, if I spend 100%, I don't have 10% to give. But the good news is, you can spend less. So get really good at giving things away. Something that I've done in my life after I heard a pastor talk about how he does it. Whenever I get a new item of clothing, I give one away. If I get a new t-shirt, I give a t-shirt away. I have all the shirts I need. I have all the pants I need. I have all the shoes that I need. So when a new one comes in, like for Christmas or my birthday, or I need a new pair, I give one away. I get rid of one. Get very used to giving things away. The more you give, the more blessed you will be. Here's another one. Live by a budget. I am amazed at how many people do not live by a budget. But then I realized I just started living by a budget 6 months ago. I just assumed I didn't spend more than came in. Start living by a budget. What our family did is I went to ChatGPT and I said, make me a zero balance budget where I'm giving a certain amount, I am saving a certain amount, here's the amount I make, here's some of our fixed expenses, give it to me. And it made a whole document, and every other day I go to my bank account and my credit card, I type in every dollar that we spend into a tracker. You won't believe how less you will spend when you actually input every dollar into it. You'll see very quickly, we're eating out way too much. I'm spending way too much on clothes or personal items. I'm spending way too much on Amazon. We have to spend less now if we want to do certain things. See, I've learned that credit card companies know that all of us are terrible at assuming how much we spend. We're all terrible at it. So until you actually track it, you don't know how much you're spending. And if you want to live with simplicity, you have to know how much you're spending so that you can be generous. But this goes far beyond staying out of debt, which it does help you with that. Once we start tracking our budget, you know what my wife and I realized? We weren't tithing enough. We did our budgets and we're like, oh, we did that math. That's not 10%. And so my wife was like, we need to spend less in order to do that. And I started making excuses as the pastor, being like, well, yeah, but because I'm looking how it is. And it's like, no, we have to spend less. We have to buy less stuff. We have to go out to eat less. If this is important and it's a command God gave us and we need to do this and if we're convicted by it, we need to make it a priority to be obedient. Live by a budget. When you live by a budget, you will spend less. You will live in simplicity. Here's another one. Be grateful for simple pleasures. I know this sounds really old, like I sound like a really old person. I have plenty of gray hair, so I'm there. But the older I get, the more I appreciate just simple things. Like I really enjoy just going out on walks with my family when it's warmer out. I really enjoy a cup of coffee in the morning. Like I look forward to that. I enjoy playing catch with my kids outside. I enjoy a home-cooked meal. I enjoy playing games with friends and family. This posture of living says far less about our income and far more about our relationship to time. To give attention to things that matter more by saying, I'm just going to enjoy the simple pleasures in life. Start emphasizing the simple and often cheap and even free things, the pleasure of this world, because there are so many that God has given us. And then the last one, recognize advertisement for what it is. This can actually get kind of fun. You know what all advertisement is? All of it. It's all propaganda. Literally all of it. Advertisement is about training your desires, reshaping your imagination, and telling you a story about the good life so that they can sell you the solution. All advertisement is this way. Recognize it for what it is. And once you start to recognize it, you won't miss it. And you can actually make it fun. It starts to feel like I'll make comments about things I see to like my family. It starts to feel like sarcasm starts to feel holy because you start to see all the ways it's trying to sell you with propaganda. You'll see a new car and you'll notice it's always the best looking people possible because they're trying to tell you in some subtle way, if you buy this new car, you'll become like models like these people. I saw a ad for new glasses and the person was on a yacht. It's like, why is he on a yacht with glasses? Because it's trying to sell you that. It's all propaganda. Don't fall for it. Recognize advertisement for what it is. See, our goal in our Christian walk is to live a life like Jesus lived, to live in simplicity, to choose to have less of what doesn't matter, not none, just less, so that you can have more of what does matter. So you can have more peace, more joy, more contentment, more generosity, more of God in our lives. And I don't know where you need to start. Probably your closet is where you need to start. And you're snowed in. Seems like a great time to go through your closet and start to give some things away that you don't need. Start choosing more of what does matter and less of what doesn't. Start living in simplicity the way Jesus did. And you know what simplicity will produce in you in this hurried culture? You know what it will start to produce? Contentment. It's being content with what we have, not what we're going to have one day, not what we're hoping to have, what we have right now. One of Paul's most famous verses that he wrote, you probably know this verse, Philippians chapter 4, verse 13. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. This is a great verse and a very popular verse. It's also the most misquoted verse I've ever heard. See, we normally use this verse to say, I can conquer anything. Like, I can do anything. Like Paul is writing about some Goliath in our life that we need to conquer. That's not what Paul is writing about here. The context is important here. The context of this verse is contentment. Let's read the whole passage. Verse 10. I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I am not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. He is writing about one of the greatest enemies we have, discontentment. The desire to always want more. The desire for the next thing. To never be satisfied with today because there's always something better coming. And when you live like the next thing will be the solution, you will always be in a hurry to get to the next thing. The truth is, you can be content today. You can live in simplicity the way Jesus did. That right now, you can be content through Christ who strengthens you. Right now, you have everything you need to live a happy, content life, because you have access to the God of the universe. You have access to his loving attention. So as we close out this series, my encouragement for you is to slow down and live like Jesus. Not in a hurry, but live in simplicity. We'll see you all next week.